Thanks for tuning into the channel. This is Dave with Crossbow Quest, and this morning I'm downstairs in my little shop where I fletch my arrows, and we're going to do one of my arrows, and I want to take you through the process of how I fletch my arrows. I was over at the range yesterday, and I shot one of my fletchings off. That does happen. No matter how you glue them on, you're going to shoot some off if you're shooting tight groups. I've shot through 3 deer this year and haven't had a vane come off. So this works very well. When I have one come off, I usually just do all 3. Unless you have an indexer on your Bitzenberger. I have the Bitzenberger Crossbow receiver, but if you don't have an indexer, it is very hard to get them back into the same spacing. So I usually just do all 3 when I knock one off or one comes loose. So I'm going to take you through the process. These are zombie slayers, and I use an X3 boning X3 vane, and I use 2 black and 1 white. So I'll take those out, as many as I need. I lay down. I'd suggest using these are pretty small, but they seem to do well with steering the arrow. They're 2.25 inches and they're very stiff. I would suggest using a very stiff material. If you like boning blazers, I would suggest the Black Sky 2.0. They are the same vein, same shape, same dimensions, but they are made of very, very stiff material. There is less drag with a hard material, a stiff material, and there is less noise. I've done some slow motion videos, and you can hear the difference in the sound of the vanes. The flutter that the blazers make, because they're soft, creates a lot of noise and a lot of drag. So I would suggest whatever you use a stiff material, especially on the speeds that we shoot out of a crossbow. So let's go through the process. I already stripped the old vanes off, and I want to show you what I use here before we go any further. The materials I use: a Bitzenberger, and I'll use a straight, and then I'll use my adjustment just to offset it about 1 degree. And if you see my one video, the first video of the doe that I shot in the early season this year, you'll notice in the slow motion how right off the crossbow my arrow is spinning. You do not want to fletch vanes on straight. You want a little bit of twist, even if it's a small amount. 1 degree should be fine out of any crossbow, unless you have a really narrow groove in your rail. But so I use Fletch Tight Platinum. It's from Boning. This stuff is great. It takes longer to set up, but as we go through, I'll show you. And this is my tube right now. And then I use, I got this at Lowe's. It's Clean Strip Fuel Denatured Alcohol to clean the, just to clean the shaft. I don't clean the vanes. And they stay on. So stripping this glue off is a whole lot easier than stripping it off with cyanoacrylate, which is quick dry glue. That stuff, you can just throw that in the trash. You get all kinds of white residue. Most people use too much. If you use too much of the Fletch Tight, as I'll show you later, you can just take a razor blade and it comes right off after about a day of drying, and you can take all that excess off right up to the edge of the vane, and it'll clean it very well. So what I usually do, I'll strip it off and scrape off all the glue, and then I'll just take some quad steel wool, and I have a mark where it's spine index, so I'll put my cock vane there, but I'll just go ahead and rough that up a little bit, and this is before you clean it. I keep this denatured alcohol closed just because of this, you know, it smells, but, and just put it on a rag. You don't need a whole lot. I'm only doing 1 arrow, so, and you want to run this, I don't want to hit my mark, but you want to run this where your veins are going to go. Just rub it, and that's all you need. So I'll put that aside. I'll put my denatured alcohol down, and then we'll get the Bitzenberger out here. Now, we're going to want to make sure I'm going to put my first vein where my mark is for my spine. So I need to line that up, and that's going to be turned up here. So like I said, I don't clean the veins. I have a mark on here where I put the crossbow, and I will I set it to mission specs, where you put the vane. Well, from the groove, I think, is where you measure it. It's 1 3/4 inches from the bottom of the groove. So that's important when you're doing this, to make sure you get those set up correctly. We got our knock set. Make sure it's the whole way down in. So you want to align that spine up with your cock feather. You want your spine, your strong side down. So that's the cock feather. We've stripped it off, used the double aught, and then cleaned it with denatured alcohol. We got our knock lined up, and you don't have to worry about doing too much of this, because like I said, you can get it, I mean, you don't have to overdo it, but you want the whole edges from the one edge to the other with glue, because you'll leave spaces in there. You'll leave air gaps in there, and I just always check that there's glue the whole way from edge to edge. Okay, so I don't know if you can see that, but that's a pretty good bead on there, and I have it set to my mark. So I just set it on and make sure it's touching even, and then I will time it for 5 minutes, and you'll let it in the jig for 5 minutes. So we'll wait and come back. While you're waiting for this to dry, stop on over to the channel, Crossbow Quest on YouTube, and I shot a doe September 20th, shot a buck on the opening day in the evening of October 4th here in Pennsylvania, and then shot another doe on October 11th. So you can watch those 3 hunts while you're waiting for this to dry. Crossbow Quest. If you like the content, please subscribe, like, and share. We've waited 5 minutes, and you watched part of my first doe hunt. By the way, I'm in the process of my shooting a quest for my final doe, so keep your eyes out for that video coming up. I'll have several days on that hunt. So you just open the clamp, pull it off. You're going to spin to the next, and we have that aligned perfectly with where my spine's at. So you take your next fletching, which would be my black, line the back edge up with the mark, that I have. And again, make sure you don't have any air bubbles in this, so you just have to have a good steady stream. You could also, if you don't want to put so much on, you could also just come down, but you want to really make sure that it is covered, the edges are covered with glue. Okay, you don't want the edges, you'd think it would smash it out, the glue, but it'll end up leaving a gap, and then you'll have some issues. So you want to make sure that whole surface is covered before you put it on. And just, again, just put it on the same way. Make sure it's good, firm, even pressure on that arrow. And now you can go back watching the first doe that I shot. Okay, so we left it in the jig for 5 minutes. So you just open the clamp, pull it off, and you're going to turn it to the next inset on your Bitzenberger. You can do this with Arizona Easy Fletch, whatever you use. Really, it's just the process with the gluing that you're going to go through. That really makes the difference. It's not necessarily the press, or I mean the jig. So you just align that up, and again, and make sure you get all your air out of your bead of glue as you're going down. I'm pretty liberal with it because it's so easy to get off of the. You don't have to go crazy. So we have a good bead from edge to edge, and the very ends goes to the very end. Make sure there are no air bubbles in that. And once again, you just slide it on there. This Bitzenberger has a magnet that'll hold it. And this will be our last one. And you can go back to watching the doe kill that I made out in eastern PA. Any of you guys have family? This was my two daughters' art room down in the basement. Thus the paint. So they did this themselves, and they have their names over here. I painted it white for them, and they went to town when they were little girls. They're adults now, and but that's the paint, and I didn't want to change it. A lot of good memories over the years, so I just left it as is, but that's the explanation of the walls. So I didn't do that. My daughters did. If you're watching the doe video, that was in eastern PA, September 20th, and we saw a ton of deer. If you watch part 2, you'll see the deer. That was the evening hunt. And a bunch of deer came out in the evening, and I got busted. But you'll notice two things on the slow motion. I use a Rage Crossbow X 125 grain, and I have tried other broadheads, and these things, I think the benefits of a Rage, the slip cam design, they make a great hole, as you'll see on that doe if you're watching. It opened right on contact. You can see the blades and the 2-inch cut. A lot of times it cuts bigger than 2-inch. If you watch the buck hunt, you'll see that buck was quartered away, and that broadhead didn't deflect. It went straight through that deer. That's the second advantage of the slip cam design. The blades will give when it goes around bone, and I've not had any issues with deflection with Rage. So I don't make any money. That's what I use. I like the slip cam design. and they don't lock back. It's kind of a floating blade, and they leave great blood trails, as you see on 3 of my videos from this year's hunt. And you still have to make a great shot. Broadhead doesn't they can save a bad shot, but you have to make a great shot. Let's just have to be honest with ourselves. If we make a poor shot, don't blame it on the broadhead. And I've shot fox with these where I made an edgy shot and one blade deployed and the other one didn't because it didn't go through anything, but the one blade still deployed and didn't deflect, and I was able to get the fox. And so great broadheads, but you'll see my arrow spinning in the slow motion shot in that first doe hunt, and then you'll see the rage open up on contact. You can see it plain as day. So check that out. And I think we're ready to pull this off. So open the jig, tilt it back, and now you'll notice that's focused. There is some slop on the glue, but when that dries and gets solid, this glue doesn't get hard. It'll stay flexible, which is good. If you have a hard shot on the tip, it won't knock them off like sand acrylate does sometimes. But you can take all of that off. You can get this to where I'd rather have too much and not enough, but I'll be able to clean all that off with the razor blade once that dries for about 24 hours. Okay, so the next process you want to do, I guess I was turning that when I was taking that tip off. So the next process you want to do is I put just a little dab on the front, and then a little dab on the back. And that just closes up the edges for you. So right there, and they're not straight, but they're not twisted very much. But you don't need much. All you got to do is get that arrow start to spin, and you'll notice on that first video, right off of the crossbow, that you can see it spinning, the arrow in the slow motion shot. So that's the process of fletching vanes, and they will stay on. You just let these dry to 24 to 48 hours, and they'll stay on. Like I said, I've shot 3 deer this year, and I've used 2 different arrows. One of them twice, and a different one on the other deer, and didn't have a fletching come off. This one came off. I was out at the range, and they're if you hit them, I had about half of it come loose, the other half stayed on. So they're going to come off from time to time if you hit them hard enough. It is what it is, but I can attest from experience that this process works. Now, I don't know on the certain vanes that you use. You want to see if the company would want you to clean the edge of the vane. Then you can clean the edge of the vane. But I don't have to do that with these, and they stay on just fine. So that's the process I use to fletch my crossbow arrows. Let's do one more thing. I'm going to measure, because different nocks are used, I'm going to measure this from the carbon to the edge of the arrow. And that would be, and it's about 1 inch and 13/16 from the end of your carbon to where the back of the vane sits. So 1 inch and 3/16. So if you want to go by that, that's Mission's standard of where they fletch their arrows, and I just use that. I use that out of my 10-point, and it shoots lights out. I use that in my Mission, and it shoots lights out. So that's the process. I hope this helps. And I always number my fletchings, and this was number 2. So it's still number 2. That way, if you get a flyer, you can you know which one it is. So if you like the content, go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. And I appreciate you coming to the channel and tuning in.